I have my book open to page 198, where it talks about learned helplessness. I have a handout for you on this. Do any of you know anything about learned helplessness? Okay, maybe here's another way to pose the question. Is there any area in life where you feel helpless? If someone asks you to do something, is there some things that you could be asked to do where you would feel helpless and say, I have no idea how to help you do this? Can't think of any? What if someone said, can you help me change the tire on my car? Could you do that? You could, Cassie?
Yeah.
You couldn't. Rest of you, who's with Cassie? Okay, so now, who's with Malia? So I guess what happens is, if you're going to go somewhere and you think you might have a flat tire, take Cassie with you, right? I mean, you can take Malia too, but make sure you have Cassie along, just in case you have a flat tire, because she can help you fix it. Because, gotcha, Sadie. Because she knows how to do that. Now, where did you learn how to change a flat tire?
My dad.
Your dad? He actually took you out and taught you how to get the wrench out of the trunk and jack the car up and take the wheel off?
Yes.
And why are you laughing about that?
I don't know, I guess it's...
Seems a little strange.
Yeah.
But now here you are. You need to send your dad an email, don't you? All of a sudden, you're the only one in psychology class who feels empowered enough to change a flat tire. The rest of you'd say, not me. That's why I have AAA. I'll just call them and sit there for 2 or 3 hours waiting for the AAA people to show up and change it for me. Can you change your own tire, Sinead?
Mm-hmm.
So 2 of you, how did you learn to do it?
We were on our way home from my grandma's funeral, and my tire blew up.
So you had no choice. Did you just figure it out, or did you get the book that came with the car and read it?
I figured out most of it because I'd seen my dad and my brother do it, but my dad helped me.
So you've seen other people do it, so from what you saw them do, you figured out how to get in there and find all the tools and get all the stuff and jack the car up. And if you didn't, there's a book in there. Does your car have a little book in it that tells you how to make things work in the car? You go, it does?
Probably does.
It probably does. Pull that book out, look in the back for the section on how to change the tire, and it'll give you pictures and detailed instructions on how to do it. And you say, well, even if I had the book and read the instructions, I just don't think I could do it. Then that would be an example of, where did I put those handouts? Here we go. That would be an example of learned helplessness. Now, my position is on this stuff is that all of us are helpless at some time in life. Put it over here so I can keep track of it. All of us are helpless at some time in life, and we've learned to be helpless because we didn't have a dad teaching us how to do it, or a brother showing us how he did it so we could do it in the future. We learned to be helpless because we didn't learn how to do it. That's why we're helpless, because we didn't learn how to do that someplace in life. So all of us experience learned helplessness. But the reason I gave you this handout is this is a teacher who wrote this, and basically the textbook says on page 199, when faced with a series of unsolvable problems, most college students not only eventually give up, but many of them make only half-hearted attempts to solve new problems, even when the new problems are easily solvable. Well, the guy who wrote the book says the problem's easily solvable. Maybe it isn't. But his point is, some problems are easily solvable, but people just don't do what they need to do to solve the problem. Even if they succeed at solving new problems, they have difficulty recognizing that their behavior had anything to do with their success. And then it talks about children raised in abusive families where they really develop a lot of helplessness, because if they ask how to do something, they get in trouble, or it's like the abusers don't want to be bothered with them. So they have all kinds of helpless problems. Some people are just too shy to ask for help. So we're all, and some people are too confident to ask for help. I don't want to ask for help. What is it? What is it you've heard people say? I'm not going to ask a question in class. It'll make me look what? Stupid. And I don't want to do that. And I say, no, people who ask questions in class, as far as I'm concerned, as a teacher and a professor, people who ask questions in class are people who want to learn something, and I want to help them learn it. And I say there's no such thing as a dumb question. Every question is a question of you trying to figure something out, and I want to help you figure it out, help you solve it. I want to help you overcome any kind of helplessness you might have in life. But my wife grew up in a home where her mother didn't want anybody in the kitchen when she was cooking, so she never taught her two daughters anything about cooking. So when we got married, she had to learn how to do this stuff from scratch. I grew up in a home where there were 3 boys, and my dad said one day, there's no way one woman is going to do all this cooking and cleaning for a whole family. So you 3 boys are going to help. So every week we had a rotation system. One of us helped in the kitchen to do the cooking, the other one helped to clean the house, and the other one helped do the laundry. And when I say helped, you did help in the kitchen with cooking because my mom loved to cook, so you were a helper there. But when it came to cleaning the house, you just cleaned the house. When it came to doing the laundry, you did the laundry. So I learned how to do all that stuff. So when we first got married, and my wife was trying to make gravy one time in the kitchen, I said, here, I'll do it. And I went in there and mixed some flour and water and took it together and poured it in the pan and started browning it and then poured milk on it. You know what I'm talking about, how to do that? And I said, there, that'll take care of it. And we sat down to eat, and there's a tear running down her cheek. What's that all about? Why wouldn't my new bride be happy that I knew how to make gravy? Any ideas? Anybody want to guess?
She did gravy different.
What?
She did gravy different.
I didn't hear you.
She did gravy different.
No, she didn't know how to make gravy at all. She'd never made it before, and all she'd done is read the instructions in a book, and it didn't make a lot of sense to her. And she was a college graduate who made A's all the way through college. And I said, Nina, what's wrong? Don't you like the gravy? She goes, yes, that's what's wrong. It's good gravy. I said, well, why not be happy about it? Because I'm supposed to know how to make the gravy, not my husband. Can you identify with that? She perceived that as her role in life. I said, hey, if your mom never taught you how to make it, how would you know? And if I had to make gravy at least 1 week out of every month, then I know how to make gravy. It's no big deal. She goes, well, yes, it is. And I made a brilliant decision. I haven't made many of those as a married guy, but I made a brilliant decision. I looked at her and I said, you know what, Nina? I don't think gravy is good for me anyway. Let's just eat potatoes from now on without gravy. Just put some butter on them, a little sour cream, and that'll do it. And I quit eating gravy on my potatoes. Say, well, isn't gravy more important than your wife's feelings? No. And then I found where I could buy gravy at the store, already in a package, frozen, where you just put it in the pan and warm it up, and bingo, you've got your biscuits and gravy. So I could start eating biscuits and gravy again, because we could buy gravy at the store. But I told her there's no reason for her to make it. And if you want roast gravy, you buy the gravy mix at the store. Now, some of you might say it's not as good. Well, it is as far as I'm concerned. Now, and see, why would I say that? Because of my wife. She's more important than how good the gravy tastes. And if you buy the right kind of packets, you can get stuff that tastes pretty good. So some people, it's just like, it wasn't her fault. Her mother just didn't teach her how to do this stuff. The two of us who tie our shoes backwards, it's not our fault. We just learned to do it on our own without having somebody teach it to us. So we're helpless when it comes to tying your shoe the right way. But the reason I gave you this handout is the person who wrote this little handout here, and for the people online, when I get home, I'll upload one to the website under files, I think it is. Yeah, under files, and you can download it and have it for your own use. But here's what this person said. I led a training last week on blended learning and asked teachers to brainstorm the biggest challenge they face in the classroom. And one answer resonated with me: learned helplessness. On my drive home, I kept returning to this phrase. Then in my own classroom last week, my students were beginning a research project that would culminate in student presentations. We've done this type of task before, yet I was bombarded with questions. What should we title this? How big should the font be? How do we add an image to the background? And I have a stock response that I use in this situation: figure it out. Now, if you were the student asking those questions and the teacher said, figure it out, what would you probably do? Would you go figure it out, or would you just tend to give up? You'd go figure it out? See, I would kind of take offense at that and say, well, forget it. If you don't tell me what you want, then it doesn't matter how I do it. But I would personally be kind of offended by them saying that to me. The only time I ever had a person say that to me as a student was when I was in graduate school working on my PhD, and I was trying to figure out how to put together the table of contents for my dissertation. And my advisor said, well, you're getting close, Tom. I said, well, can you help me? And he said, no, that's your job to figure it out. And I left his office and I said, Lord, what do I do? How do I figure this out? And then ding, it always helps to ask God for help when you're in trouble. An idea popped in my head. I'll go to the library and I'll find some dissertations where my advisor was the advisor for the dissertations, and I'll look at the table of contents to see what they look like. Are you ready for this? I found 6 dissertations on 6 different topics, and they all had identical table of contents. I go, voila, there it is. So I rearranged my table of contents to fit that pattern. I went back next week to see him, and he said, you got it right now, Tom. He had something in his head he wanted, and it was my job to go figure it out. Now, can you see where I'm thinking, okay, I'm at that level of learning. It'd be okay to say that to me. But someone who's younger, if I was saying to them, I want a certain format for your table of contents, and they say, well, what format? And I'd say, well, could you see where I could say, go online and look at this? Or I could give you a handout, or I could say something that, here's the format I want you to follow. And you give them some information to help them figure out what to do. So I kind of disagree with this handout I gave you, because I don't like telling somebody just to figure it out. I would rather tell them where to go find something. Someone the other day sent me an email and said, this math stuff in section 2.2 on intersection and union and adding and subtracting sets, I don't have any idea what's going on. And I sent him back an email, and I said, intersection is explained on these pages, union is explained on these pages, and then I said, read those pages, and if it doesn't make sense to you, then send me another email and I'll try to make sense out of those pages. You understand? I'm going to tell them where to go to get some help, and then I'm going to offer to help them if when they go there they don't get the kind of help they need. Because I guess I have a soft spot for people who feel helpless, like they couldn't do something, and I want to help them overcome those feelings by helping them learn to be successful. Because if they've had a lot of experience with learning to be helpless, tell them to figure it out isn't going to get them over it. It's just going to put them deeper in the hole. So I don't like that phrase. Now, this author says that may strike some teachers as harsh, but I disagree. Our students are conditioned from a young age to ask a teacher for help the minute something doesn't go right, or the moment they have a question. Where's the curiosity? Why don't they want to figure it out themselves? Well, look at that. Here you are, a teacher who likes to figure things out, and you can't figure out why students aren't like you. So that's why I say I disagree. Not every student is wired like you are to go figure things out. So the people who aren't wired that way, now the ones who are, they don't need your help. And the ones who, now watch this. Maybe that's why this bothers this author. Maybe this author is bothered because what figuring things out just comes naturally to them, and so they're offended by people who it doesn't come naturally to. So be careful about imposing your own preferred way of doing things on other people. Say, okay, let me help you. I would say, let's see if we can figure this out. And then I would work with them together to help them figure it out. And where's curiosity? Some people just aren't that curious. It's like, wouldn't you like to know something about the hurricane? Wouldn't you like to see some, would it be fun if I clicked on highlights of the hurricane that's hitting North and South Carolina, and we sit here and watch pictures of it? Am I the only one that wants to get home and turn on the videos and watch those cameras showing highlights of the hurricane? Any of you interested? 1, 2. See, rest of you, they're not interested. And see what we say, what's wrong with them? There's nothing wrong with them. They're just wired differently than we are. And that's what I think you have to keep in mind when you're working with students. Say, let's treat each student as an individual, and let's not bury them under the load of where they can't figure something out. And students have to learn how to answer their own questions. I circled that one and said, if the students are supposed to answer their own questions, then I don't have a job. My job is to help them answer their questions. In fact, one of the reasons that I discovered something, okay, you guys are much more techie than I am, but when I say, in doing your reading here, summarize the chapters, but do some research on the internet. When I first started doing that, I just assumed that all the students in my class knew how to find stuff on the internet. And a few years ago, when we first started using these things in the classroom, I discovered that people didn't know what. In fact, here's what happened. If you type in a search phrase and a whole bunch of stuff pops up, it'll say like what, 143,000, and you can look at that number 143,000 and go, whoa, there's no way I can look at 143,000 articles. Well, and then I said to a class one time, did you know that out of those 143,000 articles, the ones that have been looked at most often, that are the most helpful, are usually in the top 10? Because the ones that are searched the most show up first. Oh, so you don't need to look at 143,000, probably just look at the first top 10, unless it has to do with something pertaining to evolution. And then for some reason the search engine will put all the creation stuff down at the end. So then you have to go looking for it when there's a bias in the way they've programmed the search engines to look at things. So I said, hey, we need to help people learn how to answer questions. You don't have to look at everything. Just look at, I think what I used to say was 5. Now I say just look at 3 places. But then, you know what I'm discovering from reading your reports and your summaries? Once you look at 3, you say that's not enough, I need to look at some more. Most of you are looking at 5 or more anyway. But it could be that by taking away the number 5 and saying 3, can you see what happens? The student says, 3, I can do that. And then after you've done 3, you're kind of inclined to go ahead and do some more because you're just curious about something and you want to find some more information. So I'm not going to say, answer your own question. I'm going to say, let me show you how to find an answer to your question. And my job is to teach them how to learn, then that means my job is to teach them how to find answers to questions. My job is to teach them where to go to find how to format something. If they know how to continue learning long after they leave my class, I've given them a gift that will make college, career path, and life easier. If they know how to continue learning. Okay, so that means I need to teach them how to be a continual learner. I need to help them acquire those skills. When students have questions, I ask them, did you ask anyone else? That sounds like I don't want to be bothered. I mean, doesn't it? No, I'm not going to say, did you ask anyone else? When students have a question, I say, let's see if we can find an answer. And I sit down with them and start looking for answers. And it depends on where the question comes from. But most questions today, you can Google it and find something on the internet. So I'm going to say, instead of saying, did you Google it? I'll say, here, let me help you Google that. And they say, well, I could Google it on my own. Okay, so then, but if they're not sure of that, then I'll Google it for them. That's why sometimes I actually type stuff in here to show you how I Google something, and have you noticed when I start typing, a whole bunch of stuff pops up on the screen? And then I pick one of those phrases and click on it. And see, the idea is, the reason I'm doing that here is I want you to kind of learn by watching, like you were saying today, and you watched your brother change the tire. Learn by watching somebody do something, how to do it. So I'm not even going to ask you, did you ask someone else? But I'm going to say, did you Google it? Or do you know how to Google it? Or you want me to help you Google it? And then the third question that this author asks is, have you searched YouTube for a tutorial? Have any of you ever searched YouTube for a tutorial? What was it for, Amelia?
It was to figure out how to do something on Google Docs.
I wanted to know how to do something on Google Docs. What was yours, Seven?
I've looked up plenty. The most recent one was I was trying to figure out how to load a sticker pricing gun from the place I worked at over
I
the
want to
summer.
know how to load a sticker pricing gun. And did you find out?
No.
Oh no,
I
did you
couldn't-
find out?
I couldn't find the right model.
You couldn't find the right model to show you how to do it. Any rest of you? Have you used YouTube tutorials? What for?
Fix my sewing machine.
To fix your sewing machine? Did it work?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, don't you feel powerful when you do that stuff and it works? What, Sedaine?
Crochet hat.
What?
Crochet hat.
Crochet a hat? Did you crochet one?
Once,
Did it work?
and then I found out another way a few years ago that I don't remember.
All right. Did the rest of you, have the rest of you done this? What'd you do?
I was looking up how to use the new Word or the Word version.
The new version of Word?
Yeah.
Have you done one?
I've used it for origami.
For origami. Oh, that's cool stuff.
Yep.
Have you done one?
Probably.
You just can't remember. My son-in-law? No, he's not my son-in-law. He's my granddaughter's husband. So what does that make him? My grandson, that's what it makes him. I count him as one of my grandchildren. I have, what, 2 granddaughters? Which means and I have 4 grandsons, which means I will have 6 grandsons eventually when they're both married, and one of them's married. So I have a new grandson, and I just treat him like a grandson, like the rest of them. And since I had daughters, and my other 4 grandsons will someday get married, I will someday have 4 more granddaughters. So I don't call him an in-law, he's just a grandson, but it's so cool. He's trying to fix something on his car, and he just immediately goes to Google and goes to YouTube and looks for a tutorial. And he was telling me about doing that, and I thought, wow, that's a cool idea. And then I was getting my oil changed, and they said, you know, the light that lights up your license tag is burnt out and it needs to be replaced, or you could get a ticket. I said, so what do you charge to replace it? And they said $30. I said, well, I think I can do that myself. He said, well, it's pretty complicated. And I said, well, I'll try to figure it out. If I can't, I'll come back and pay you $30. I bought the bulb for $5. Went on YouTube, found a tutorial that told me how to do it, popped the trunk on my car, pulled that lining down, reached in there, popped the bulb out, put a new one in. It wasn't complicated, it was hidden. It was put someplace where I couldn't see it. So if you have never used a YouTube tutorial for something, find one. When students have a question, I put down 4 things. I help them Google it. I help them search for a YouTube video. I show them how to find an answer to their question, but I never say, figure it out. The last thing on this page is ask yourself, teachers who want to cultivate curious, lifelong learners should stop and think before they answer students' questions. Ask yourself, is this a question they could figure out for themselves? If the answer is yes, then let them struggle a little. Okay, here's my problem. You come to me with a question, and I conclude from your question that since I could figure it out, you should be able to figure it out too. So I say, go ahead and struggle with it. You probably won't come back to me with another question. You'll go to somebody else. So I'm thinking, if I have to err, I would rather err on the side of giving too much help than not giving enough help. You follow that? If I'm going to make a mistake, because I sure don't want to drive someone away, so I want to be careful there. And some of this stuff, when a person is trying to determine, is this a question they can figure out for themselves, maybe I should probably be saying, this might not be learned helplessness. Don't react so strongly to it. It could be that they've just never done this before and they need some help walking through it the first time. I mean, if I sent out an email that said in math class, after you do your homework, turn to the back of the book and grade your paper and check the ones you missed wrong and try to figure out why you missed them. And if you can't figure it out, send me an email and I'll try to help you figure out how to answer the question. Now, aren't those instructions pretty straightforward? Okay, why would someone turn in their homework without checking their paper if I said to do that? Now, watch this. I have never in my life had a math teacher who had me check my own work. You understand that? That's such a new phenomena that it's never happened before. So it's like, that just doesn't seem right. That seems strange. There's something wrong with that. So I have to give people time to get over that notion and say, you know, you go to the back of the book, you check them. No, I don't like checking them because so many of them are wrong. I just don't want to do that. It's like, well, if we're going to learn math, we need to check our work. And the reason I have them do it that way is so they get immediate feedback after they work the problems to see if they missed them. It's like, oh, but I missed so many. I don't want to spend that much time learning this much math. Well, that's a choice you have to make. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But it's just like, I'm thinking, now see, watch. What's wrong? Aren't they curious about math? What's the answer to that question when you ask the general population? No. And I have to be careful that I don't impose my mathematical model, my mathematical way of thinking on the rest of the world and say, no, let's help people work through this. Let's help people find their way to this new technique of learning mathematics. So you have to be a little patient with people and say, for some people, it could be what you're doing is so strange and different from what they've ever experienced. They're just going to have trouble adjusting to it. Okay, so that should take care of learned helplessness. Now, there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. On page 201, it talks about comparing classical and operant conditioning, and that's just a cute little academic exercise. And then on page 202, it talks about extinction and spontaneous recovery. My grandson, I take him home from school 2 days a week, and last night when I was taking him home from school, he said, Poppy, he said, our little kitten Boots, we thought it was gone, and we were all worried about it, and this morning the alarm went off on the car, and my dad went out there, and Boots was in the car. So when my mom came home last night, or yesterday, she left the door open, and Boots jumped in the car. She didn't know it, she shut the door. We can't find Boots because he's locked in the car. And he said, we're out calling and saying, Boots, Boots, where are you? And he said, you would have thought he would have jumped up in the window so we could see him, but he didn't, and he was in the car all night long. And I said, what's this cat's problem? Why does this cat keep jumping into cars? When I take Casey home, he opens the door and gets out, and the cat jumps in the car. Well, Casey said, I found out, Poppy, why that happens. My brother's girlfriend used to own that cat, but she lives close to college where she can't have a cat in her apartment, so he's keeping the cat. But guess what she taught that cat to do? When she's going someplace, she would open the door and say, Boots, Boots, and he would jump in the car. She taught that cat to jump in the car. So that cat's just doing what he was taught to do, like that little tiger there jumping through that ring of fire. So Casey's trying to extinguish this habit that this cat has learned. Well, it's going to take a while because that cat's been doing that for a while, and probably if he gets that cat to quit jumping, because I said, well, since the cat was in your mom's car all night, let's see if Boots will jump into my car. He left the door open, got the back seat open, took his backpack out, and Boots just jumped right in. Didn't even remember the lesson from yesterday that you got locked in a car overnight and didn't have any food or water. So it's almost like, even if he figures out to work with his cat long enough to get it to not jump in cars anymore, probably when the girl who taught the cat that shows up in the parking lot and the cat sees her, what's that cat going to do? He's going to recover from that and jump right back in her car and take off again. So that's what's going on here. And that happens not only to cats but to people as well. New learning on page 207 based on original learning. Does once you learn something, does that encourage you to want to learn something else that's related to that? If you can make a pancake, once you learn to make pancakes, what's the next thing you want to try to make? Or maybe I should turn it around. Once you've made waffles, because what, you just put the batter in a waffle iron and shut it and cook it and it pops out. Once you've made waffles, what are you inclined to want to do? Maybe I'll try making pancakes. Is making pancakes as easy as making waffles? Not unless you have a pancake iron. Do they make irons that make pancakes like they do waffles? Say, I like the crunchy part, so I'll just keep making waffles. Just give it up. But the idea is that once I've learned how to do something, then something new that's related to it a little bit, I'll tend to want to learn new things. Which to me that's why I call some of this stuff about when we're getting people started with learning. It's like we're priming the pump. We're giving them a taste of what it's like to learn something, and then that will encourage them to keep wanting to learn some more on their own. And then they talk about, on page 208, contingencies. All these different schedules. In fact, the schedules for reinforcement on page 209 can just, and page 210 can just about wear you out. And then they come to summing up. So I'm going to turn to page 211 and talk about summing up with another handout here. Well, I guess with two handouts, so I'll give you this one first. The first one is called positive reinforcement. So before you get overwhelmed, the reason I'm giving you these handouts is I'm not sure if you'll keep your book or not, but this information is something that you can use in your Christian ministry. You can use it in your personal life. You can use it in all kinds of ways and in all kinds of places. So basically, this whole section on this stuff about reinforcement and punishment and rewards and all that kind of thing, I found this handout that I thought was very good. So I basically just copied the first of 4 pages. You can go back and look it up, and I'll put it online again for the online students. But basically, here's the summing up of this whole thing. It's important for teachers to use a variety of teaching techniques to provide students with a successful learning environment. And one very important technique that I would like to discuss is using positive reinforcement. A teacher that uses positive reinforcement increases positive behavior from the students, which results in a successful learning environment. Now, somebody asked me one time, why is learning to use positive reinforcement so difficult? And here's what I said. Because most of us haven't been raised with positive reinforcement. If you go to a store with collectibles in it that are very expensive, and you take your child with you, why someone would do that, I don't know, but if they take their child with them, and the child starts to touch something, what does the parent say, or the adult say? Don't touch, don't touch. So, see, we live in a world that seems to automatically use this negative stuff. And because the world we live in, like even if you go to work and you're doing something, no, don't do it that way. You understand? That the world we live in is so negative that we have just learned by being in that negative world that that's the way you handle stuff. So what I'm wanting you to do is look at this and say, I'm going to try something different. I'm going to try using positive reinforcement. Now, when I read this stuff years ago and we had little children, I would say, don't touch. And then I said, how could I phrase that in a positive way? And I just started saying, hey, look at that. Just don't touch it because it might break, but look at that. Look at that. You understand? We can put our hands in our pockets or put our hands behind us, and we can look all day long, get as close as we want to look at it. We just don't touch it because we don't want to break it. Because if we break it, we have to pay for it. You follow what's going on? You can take almost anything and turn it into a positive if you think about it a little bit. And the idea with emphasizing the positive is that it makes for a better learning environment and it improves relationships. So one way a teacher can verbally use positive reinforcement is to notice something positive about a child's behavior. Have you ever heard that phrase? Catching them doing something good? 7 has. Where did you hear that, 7?
I work at a preschool.
So this kind of stuff has become popular. And don't you find that what you're learning by working there is saying, you know, I can see the implications of this in my life in all kinds of ways. Because they're saying this, because, okay, is it fair to say, Seven? This stuff really does work.
It does.
It really works. And I not only used it with my own children, I use it in the classroom with students. Watch this. I'm going to ask you a math question, and you give me the wrong answer, just for fun. What is 3 plus 2?
7.
What?
7.
7. I thought 3 plus 4 was 7. Is 3 plus 4 7? Then what would 3 plus 2 be? Oh, they say, oh, 5. I said, there you go. You understand how, I mean, if you were in school and I said, what's 3 plus 2? And you said 7, what was the teacher's response? Wrong. Gong. Don't you feel stupid? And see, I inherit people from those kind of math classrooms all over the world. And I'm saying, how can I be more positive about this and help them get beyond all of their bad experiences in the past? So I've used it with my children, I've used it in Sunday school classes, I've used it with fellow adults. Years ago, we had an academic dean who wanted all the faculty to start writing behavioral objectives. And some of the faculty didn't know what a behavioral objective was. So he said, we're going to have a training session on writing behavioral objectives. And he said, and Tom, you know all about it, so you're going to teach it. So I came into the faculty training session, and everybody was there because the academic dean said you have to be there. And they walk in and I'm going, well, and he had given us a book on writing behavioral objectives, just a little short booklet. So I said, how many of you have read the booklet already? And about half of them raised their hands. I'm going, well, good for you. Here's something to chew on while I'm explaining this stuff to the rest of the class. And I passed out little candy bars, Snicker, not little ones, big Snicker candy bars. Because big faculty members need big rewards to keep them going. And then they go, oh, wow. And then the rest of them say, are we going to get a candy bar? I said, only if you understand this stuff well enough to pass the test I'm going to give. And some of them who read it said, hey, I already know this stuff. Can I just take the test now? And I said, sure. Who thinks they know it? And about half of them raised their hands. I gave them the paper. They took the test. I said, looks like you already know how to write behavioral objectives. You don't need to stay and listen to this. Here's 2 quarters to go down to the end of the hall at the pop machine down there and buy yourself a cold drink and go along with your candy bar. Now, guess what happened? The other half of the faculty who had to go through this training, they were all, okay, the first thing someone asked, if we learn this stuff and pass the test, do we get 2 quarters and a candy bar? And what was my answer? Yes. And I had a whole bunch of people with PhDs and master's degrees working to get a cold pop and a candy bar. Because I just know how this positive stuff works. Because they weren't interested in being in there doing that kind of thing. So be as positive as possible about this stuff. And I told them, it's not that, this is not rocket science. This is not that complicated. And it won't take you long to pick it up and catch on to it. Part of it is just learning some educational jargon. See, if we're not careful, all this reading in here can just be overwhelming to say, I just don't think I could use it. That's why I gave you this handout. By reinforcing the positive behavior the child was exhibiting, a child is more likely to repeat that behavior. When you reinforce their positive behavior, what do you say? Say, okay, boys and girls, I want to explain something to you. Now, do all the little boys and girls turn their faces and listen to you, 7, when you say that?
No.
But 1 or 2 will. And the 1 or 2 do say, well, look at that. Mary and Mark are looking right at me, listening to every word I say. Thank you, Mary and Mark. And understand, they feel positive about what they're doing, and the rest of them think, I should probably be paying attention too. It just has that effect on them. And if I really want to drive home the message, I give Mary and Mark a little treat of some kind, a little reward that the rest of the class doesn't get. So it not only reinforces that child, but it reinforces that child's behavior, but then children around that child will hear the teacher give the child praise for the specific action, and will know the teacher is happy to hear those kinds of words. That the other kids will pick up where, oh, this is what I need to do if I want to get that praise from the teacher. In turn, the child will be more likely to behave in a positive manner. Children like to get attention, and it's important to provide students with positive attention rather than negative. By the way, did you ever wonder why some kids just misbehave in the classroom? Just for no reason at all? Okay, it's because they want some attention. So I concluded years ago that, okay, that behavior is inappropriate in class. But see, I would say to them, and it isn't like I'm never going to say that. I'd say, John, that behavior is inappropriate in class. It disrupts class, and it interferes with everybody else learning something. So I want you to stop it. But I want to talk to you after class. I can't. I have to go to another class. Okay, we'll eat lunch together today, and you and I can talk about this some more and see if we can reach an understanding. Now, see, if he wants attention, I'm going to give him some. He's going to sit with me in the cafeteria, and we're going to talk this through. Now, is that a reward or is that punishment? If the teacher said to you, I'll meet you in the cafeteria, we're going to sit at a table by ourselves and talk this through, is that a reward or is that punishment? Is that a pleasant thing, or is that something you would rather not have happen? That's a pleasant thing? Unpleasant? I found with me, I didn't find many students that, oh, Mr. Bonight's going to eat lunch with me in the cafeteria. How cool is that? And so the guy who's disrupting, he decides, if the price of disrupting is have to eat lunch with Mr. Bonine instead of sitting with my friends, I think I'll quit disrupting. But if it's just he needs attention, then I'm going to give him the attention he needs, and he'll get that attention with just sitting there with me. You follow? If I've made a mistake, in other words, if I'm going to do something that maybe isn't exactly the right thing to do the thing that has the least possible negative consequences. So I'm going to meet with him in the cafeteria and sit down and talk it over. And by the way, I always ate in the cafeteria when I was a teacher, and there was a reason for it. Have any of you ever done any observations? Oh, you haven't. You're not that far along in your program. Okay, maybe life has changed, but it used to be in the teacher's lunchroom, all I would hear was teachers making negative comments about students. And I concluded that wasn't healthy for me or for the students, for me to get that impression of them. So I said, I just am not going to eat in here. So where do I eat? In my room? No, that looks like I'm being a loner. I'll eat in the cafeteria to hang out with the students. And I would go in the cafeteria and sit at the end of the table sit down at the table with my little lunch to eat it. And did students just naturally go sit at my table? No, they sat someplace else. But they didn't know it. Back then my hearing was better, and I could sit there and eat lunch and read a book at the same time, and they would say, look at Mr. Bonite over there. He's just studying all the time. Da, 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 da. They say, so you better be careful. He can hear what you're saying. He said, he doesn't hear what I'm saying. They say, watch, Mr. Bonite is just goofy. See, he doesn't do anything about it. So see, now they think, now he can't hear me, so I'm sitting here listening to all these teenage conversations. Just by being quiet and sitting there and listening to what's going on. And then I take notes of what's happening and can talk about it in my Bible class about the kinds of things that we need to be careful about in our walk with God and why it's important to live this way. If a child knows they'll receive attention from the teacher for a certain behavior, they're more likely to repeat it, whether it's good or bad. Therefore, it's important for a teacher to provide as many opportunities as possible for catching children doing real good things in the classroom and making positive comments to reinforce the behavior. Now, see, it says catching children. Years ago, I had an administrative role here in the school before I got too old to work every day of my life. So now I just work 3 days a week and sleep the other 2 because I'm just getting older and don't have the energy I used to have. But guess what I found? This doesn't just work with children, it works with adults as well. And every now and then I would just walk through the building, not even my department, other people's departments, and I would, okay, the people in my department, I was always doing things, going by and saying, how's it going? I appreciate the work you do. Just giving them positive comments. I'd usually go by on Monday and make a positive comment, and then come by on Friday and make another one, and ask them if they had any questions or need any help with something. And then I, once in a while, would just walk through the building, and I'd see somebody and said, oh, you know what? And I stopped in a guy's office one time, and I said, you know what? I've watched the stuff you're doing for the school here, and I really appreciate it. You have made a significant contribution to this school. And here's a grown man who got a little tear in his eye. And I said, oh, I'm sorry. Is something going on in your life that's stressing you out? He said, no. He said, did you know in the 5 years I've worked here, you're the first person who said you appreciate what I'm doing? Is that wrong? Is that wrong to not show appreciation? Somebody said, I don't know, is it? Or is that just psychology? Does the Bible say give honor to whom honor is due? So it's wrong not to show people appreciation. Now, did somebody say, I'm not going to show him appreciation, so we'll see how long he goes before he starts feeling bad? Why don't people show appreciation? I've actually asked that question. And one guy said, well, nobody ever appreciates me. Well, there. So what? You're not appreciated, so you're going to inflict the same pain on the rest of the world? No. What does the Bible say? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Not do unto others as others have done to you. And one time I was talking about this in a meeting with some people in a church, and this dear old saint, he said, Brother Tom, he said, there's a reason we don't give compliments to our pastor. And I said, what is it? He said, we're keeping him humble. I said, well, there you go. I mean, isn't it important to have a humble pastor? Yes. But guess what? And here's what I said. When it talks about humbling somebody, I don't think there's any Bible verse that tells me to humble you. It tells me to encourage you, to help you, to appreciate you. It tells me to humble myself before God. And if I don't humble myself, who does the Bible say will humble me? God will humble us. And I said to this dear old saint, could it be that we've decided to take on one of God's responsibilities instead of fulfilling our own responsibility? Because our responsibility is to encourage and to build up. And God will humble them. And pray that they'll humble themselves. But don't decide to take that on yourself. In addition, it's important for teachers to verbally redirect students positively by stating the behavior that's expected. And here's an example. The teacher says to little Johnny, you don't say stop running, but you say, please use your walking feet in the classroom. Now, see that's foreign to me. I'm not going to say, please use your walking feet in the classroom. That just doesn't sound like me. But I would say, running is for outside, Johnny. Inside we walk. Remember? Inside we walk. What do we do when we're inside the building? Now see, I'm going to follow up with a question. And Johnny will say, we walk. I said, there you go. You got it right. Walk inside. And where do we do our running? Outside. There you go. You got it. So let's say it together. Walk inside, run outside. Walk inside, run outside. You follow what I'm doing? I'm not saying stop running. I'm simply taking a positive approach, but I'm not going to use the exact same words the person who wrote the article used. I'm going to use words that fit my personality and my style. When a teacher states what the child should be doing, the child creates an image of what they're supposed to do, what they should do. At our house, when we sat down to eat a meal, I just wanted my children to say, may I please have some more potatoes? And I practiced that. Nina, would you please pass me the potatoes? And she'd say yes, and I'd say thank you. So I modeled that in front of my children. I don't know where my children learned to say this, but I still remember the first time my oldest daughter said, I want some potatoes. Where does that come from if you live in a world where we say, may I please and thank you? Where does that come from? The heart is what? Deceitful, and what else? You don't know? Desperately wicked. And may I say this, ladies? Little girls who are just as cute as buttons get away with wicked stuff because they look so cute, and they would never do something like that. Sorry, I read my Bible too many times. And I said, Nina, did you hear a noise? And she goes, yes. I said, I wanted some potatoes. I said, Nina, did you hear that noise? I said, I'm thinking that if my daughter wanted some potatoes, she would say, would someone please pass me the potatoes? Pass the potatoes. What did you say? Is pass the potatoes good enough, ladies? What's the missing word? Please. Please pass the potatoes. There you go. Now that's what we're looking for. You understand? That you just say, I want to change the way this person lives by using positive reinforcement. And I give them the potatoes. But I don't have to say, you're not going to get any potatoes if you keep talking that way at this table. I'm just going to use positive reinforcement. And talk about put in their mind an image of what I want them to do. As an educator, it's important to remember how much of an impact on each student we have. I think sometimes we forget how much of an impact we have on the people around us. When my daughter took her driving test to get her license, she lost points because she rolled through a stop sign. Did that happen to any of you? Where did she learn? If it says stop, don't you stop? And on the way home I said, how could you roll through a stop sign? And guess what she said to me? That's what you do, Dad. Ah! Yeah, see, watch. Well, yeah, but I already have my license. Well, wait a minute. You can get a ticket for that. So I remembered that. So whenever my grandchildren got to the age where they were ready to start getting a license, I would let them ride with me, and I'd say, now, see this stop sign? This stop sign is so far back from the corner that you can't see cars coming, but if you drive past the stop sign without stopping, the person who gives you the exam will take off points. So you stop at the sign, then you roll up where you can see if any cars are coming, you stop again, and then you go when the traffic's clear. And I talked to them about it, and talked to them about how much money it saves you to learn to follow the rules for driving. But can you see, this daughter lost points because she had me as an example, and she was just doing what I did. And what's interesting is when her daughter went to get her license and failed the test the first time, then I took that daughter out driving and coached her on how to drive in a way that will get you past the test. I said, and then after you have your license, you can drive any way you want, but it could cost you a lot of money. Used to be the speed limit out here was 25 miles an hour. No, it's 35 here, but it was 25 in Belton. And you know what the Belton police did? They were paying for Thanksgiving dinner at the expense of Calvary students. Coming down the road 35, you get down to the Belton area and it's 25 and you didn't pay attention. Policeman pulls you over, you're going 10 miles over the speed limit. That'll cost you. And sure enough, it happened to my granddaughter. And I said, now see, instead of being negative, I said, you know what? There's two kinds of tuition we pay in life. We pay tuition to go to a class and learn something, or we pay tuition in the school of hard knocks. So I don't know how much you paid in tuition for all of your classes this semester, but you just paid $100 in the school of hard knocks to learn about speed limit changes in little cities where they're taking advantage of people who don't understand what's going on. That's just life. And what's your reaction? That's not fair and that's not right. And what do I say to that? Life is, have you heard this one before? Life is not fair, and you will experience injustice for the rest of your life. Learn how to deal with it. It's important to make the influence we have a positive one by using positive reinforcement as one of the many techniques incorporated in the classroom. And not only that, incorporated in life, incorporated in relationships. I leave school today. Yesterday, on the way home from taking my grandson home, I called my wife and said, I think you wanted some stuff from the store. What was it? And she told me, and I said, that's just 4 things. I can remember that. So I went to the store and bought it. Now, when I leave school today, I'll call her on the phone and say, Nina, do you need anything from the store? She goes, well, you just went to the store last night, but I just thought of something this morning that I forgot to put on the list yesterday. Now, I have 2 choices. I can make a negative response or a positive response. Everyone know what kind of negative response I'm tempted to make? Why didn't you put it on the list yesterday? That doesn't accomplish anything. So just swallow it, Tom. Swallow it. Don't even say it. What do you say? Say something positive. Say something nice to her. I said, you know what, Nina? I said, the fun thing about stopping on the way home from school is I get some exercise walking up and down the aisles looking for bargains. And sometimes I find these fantastic bargains at the store. So who knows what I'm going to find today when I stop to get your little baking powder or whatever it is you want. Don't worry about it. I'll stop and get it. I mean, life is so much more fun when you put a positive spin on things. And if you haven't tried it, give it a try and see where it takes you and see what happens. Okay, I've got one last handout here for summing up. Now, are you seeing any ways, I mean, this is a chapter on learning. Are you seeing any ways that you can use this stuff in your own personal life? Because that's one of the reasons I'm giving these handouts, is I don't want us to leave this chapter without you taking with you some useful information. And this one is internal factors that affect learning. So this is kind of a generalization on this stuff before we start talking about, on page 213, cognitive learning and learning by observing. We've talked about that several times. So we only have one more topic to cover. So, and we'll have time for that too before we run out of time here. But I just want you to take, I kept thinking, this chapter is so valuable, so significant. I want you to have some things to take with you so that you can put this stuff into practice. And here's how you can use this personally. Several internal factors that affect learning: goals or purpose. In other words, if I have a purpose for learning the stuff in this class, I'm going to learn a lot more and learn it more effectively than if I'm just taking the class to earn the credit to move on my way through my course of study. You follow the thinking? You say, my goal is to make an A. Okay, that's great, but what's your purpose for learning what you need to learn to make an A? You say, what? How do you plan to use this in the future? Can you see how this would benefit you in any way? And of course, what this person says is, goals and purposes should be specific and clear so that learners understand. So that means as a teacher, I need to make my goal and purpose clear and specific so that the learners understand what it is we're trying to accomplish. Then the second one is motivation. Provide some kind of motivation to your students. What was I doing at first in this class to get you to read the chapters before we came to class to talk about them? I was giving prizes. See, yep. And once you quit giving prizes, I quit reading the chapters. Now, if that's really the case, because I haven't been asking lately, have I? So maybe next week, I should start asking again. Like, let's see, we finished chapter 5 today, is it? So on Monday, we'll start chapter 6. So I'll probably send an announcement to you over the weekend that says read chapter 6 for Monday. And then when I come in on Monday, I might just say, so who read chapter 6? And I'll pass out some more prizes. Oh, well, if he's going to pass out prizes, I'm going to read chapter 6. And if I don't, remind me. You said if we read chapter 6, you're going to give us a prize on Monday. Tell me about it, and I'll pull some prizes out of the closet here and give you something. Okay? But see, the idea is that I'm going to give prizes because there's a purpose. If you've read the material before we talk about it, it kind of sets the stage mentally for our discussions in class, and it helps what I'm saying register more, and it helps you better understand what I'm talking about, as well as better understand what you read when you were reading the stuff in the book. So it becomes motivation. Now, what about motivating myself? Why am I taking all these classes? When I was working on my bachelor's degree like you are, I said, because you have to have this class to get a degree, and I want a college degree. And that was my motivation, to get a college degree. I wasn't necessarily thinking about how am I going to apply this to my life. Now, I would say today, well, when I went to graduate school, okay, I went to graduate school to get a master's degree in curriculum and instruction, and in the process, I thought, oh, I'm learning, I was a teacher, so I'm learning how to be a better teacher. So I was thinking then, not so much about, I'll have a master's degree when I'm finished. I mean, I will have, but I'm learning things that will help me be more effective in my classroom. You follow what happens? So start thinking about what motivates me to do what I'm doing. What motivates me to call my wife and ask her if she wants me to stop at the store on the way home? When I go see my doctor, it doesn't matter whether it's my general practitioner or my heart doctor. They both ask the same question. What do you do for exercise? And I want to give them a good answer. So what I say is, I walk up and down the aisles of the grocery store looking for bargains. And he says, well, I guess that'd work. I said, you know how many miles I walk a week doing that? And I've actually calculated in the stores that I frequent how far I walk when I go up and down every aisle. He goes, well, he said, that's a good exercise plan. You understand? So what's my motivation for asking my wife? If she says yes, I say, great, I'll get some exercise. If she says no, I'm going, well, good, I don't have to exercise. Because I don't like exercising, but I know it's good for me. So you say, how do I motivate myself? And how do I create an interest in doing something? Well, because the doctor says it's healthy and I can tell when I'm walking like I should. and eating like I should, I feel better. So I've increased my interest. Now, number 3 is the instructor needs to raise the interest of the students. One of the things I do in this class to try to increase your level of interest is I try to show you how this stuff works in real life. Does that help? One of the online students said, I never thought psychology could be so interesting. And I thought, all right, that's what we're trying to do here, is raise your level of interest. And in all of your studies, you could say, okay, maybe I don't have a direct interest in this, but what can I do inside to make myself take more of an interest in what's going on here? Number 4 is attention. Instructors must secure the attention of the students. Oh, but it doesn't say how. So maybe you want to Google, how do I get students to pay attention? But from your standpoint as a student, I need to be paying attention when I'm in class. Now I know you guys are, you can do 2 things at once. You can drive a car and text on your phone, even though it's illegal, and even though it'll cause accidents. And you can be on your little instruments and sit in class and listen at the same time, and you can do both. But your level of attention increases when you cut out distractions and focus on what's going on. Just to show you how this works, have you ever been in church when right when the pastor is making a closing significant statement, a fire truck or an ambulance goes by, woo, 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 and all the people in church turn and look out the window to see what's going on? The great deceiver just tried to distract people from hearing what the pastor just said. And if the pastor studies psychology, he'll probably say, you know, that ambulance was trying to keep you from being attentive to what I just said, so I'm going to say it again. Because it's a very important point. And I might even ask you to write it down. And doesn't that help when you hear something and you write it down? It helps stick it in your mind. Have you learned this already? If I read something and then I write some notes about what I've read, I've learned more. I'm being more attentive to it and I learn more from it. If I'm reading it, watch this. If I read it out loud and write notes, I've even increased my learning level higher than before, because now I'm not only putting it visually into my mind, I'm putting it audibly through my ears, and I'm writing some notes on paper with my hand. And it's just amazing what you can do to raise your level of attention when it's necessary. And it's not always necessary. You say, yeah, it's not necessary here because this stuff isn't that complicated. Where it gets complicated, then probably you need to raise your attention level a little bit. And again, if it's really complicated, that's the beauty of these videos. If it's really complicated, what you probably need to do is go listen to the video again. I know that sounds awful disgusting if it's something that's hard to handle, but it'll help you raise your attention level. Drill and practice. Drill and practice. I don't throw handouts away just because of misspellings. Did you catch that? This method includes repeating. It's called repeating the task. They just had a spelling error in the handout. Repeating the task n number of times. Over and over and over again until it sticks in your mind. Number 6 is fatigue. There are 3 types of fatigue: muscular, sensory, and mental. By the way, because of mental fatigue, that's why math goes all semester instead of 8 weeks. Can you imagine, those of you who are taking math class, if the class was an hour and a half long and we covered 2 topics each class session? It wouldn't work. There's just too much. I mean, at the end of 50 minutes, your brain already hurts. If I extend the time, your brain's beyond hurting, it just shuts down. So you can't do math in 8 weeks. Some people could, the people who are naturally mathematical and could probably test out of the class, but all the people who need a whole 16 weeks to get it down. So just be aware of fatigue and how you just wear people out. You say, yeah, that's the thing, that's why I don't like math, it makes me tired. Yeah, because you're using what I call your mental math muscles, and you don't normally exercise those very much. And when people are fatigued, take a break. When you're teaching little kids, if what you're doing is you can tell it's just they can't handle anymore, take a break and do something else and come back to it later. Have shorter learning sessions more often. Aptitude is the 7th one. If we're not careful, if I have an aptitude for math and I'm teaching math and the kids with an aptitude for math get it, I have a tendency to just move on and say, we've got that covered. But it's like, no, because that's only about, 10% of the people in the room? The other 90% need a lot more explaining and a lot more help because they don't have the aptitude for it. I actually had a math teacher tell me one time, he said, Tom, he was watching me teach, he said, Tom, what's your purpose in the way you teach this class? I said, to help everybody in the room master mathematics. He said, we don't need that. He said, about 10% of us are good at math, and that means we have a nice little kind of like our own little union of mathematicians, and we don't want to enlarge it so there's not a lot of competition for the jobs. So let's keep teaching math so only the few people who are mathematically inclined can learn the material. And I said, sorry, I can't teach that way. And he didn't like it, but he said, well, obviously you're focused on what you're trying to do. Attitude. What's my attitude? I mean, I'm so used to hearing people, I hate math, I'm no good at math, I never could do math. And I have one answer for all of them. That's because you didn't have a good math teacher. Really. And then they say, well, I was homeschooled. I said, well, apparently your parents weren't good math teachers. But it doesn't matter, because now you're an adult learner. I can help you learn that stuff now. Emotional conditions. What are my feelings? I'll tell you what my feelings are. I hate math. I said, yeah, you hate math because you didn't have someone who made math interesting. Math is fun. I love to say that to people who hate math. They go, math is fun? I don't think so. And you watch, by the end of the semester, some of those people are actually going to say, the words will come out of their mouth, this was kind of fun. Oh, I knew it. It would happen if we work at it long enough. So, accept people's feelings about things. I hate doing dishes. Well, okay, so you hate doing dishes. So do you want to eat out of dirty plates tomorrow? No. Is that more gross than doing dishes? Yes. Then I think we'll take the least gross option and do the dishes. Why can't we eat off of paper plates all the time? It's an environmental thing. Now see, I'm not even an environmentalist, but when that works to use it, I'm going to use it. Number 10, speed and accuracy and retention. That varies with people, so be patient with people in that regard. Number 11, learning activities. Learning depends upon the activities and experiences provided by the teacher. So as a teacher, if I want people to learn, I give them some activities that enhance learning. And then testing. What kind of test do you give? I mean, it used to be the test in this class, you would have to memorize information, come to class, and it was a power test on how well you could memorize stuff, and then write it out in the classroom. Once I became a blended class where I teach it online, where that puts the classroom people at a disadvantage because the people at home don't have anybody who monitor them to make sure they do it from memory. So I said, okay, so all the exams in this class are open book. So now it's no longer a power test on how much you can memorize. It's a test on how fully can you answer a question. Do you follow what happens? Now we've gone from memory power to depth of answering a question as a way for grading it. And it says that when you look at the questions are the same. Well, I've added some questions too, but the questions are pretty much the same. It's just I'm looking for a fuller answer than I did when you were supposed to memorize. And guidance, number 13, I love this. Everyone needs guidance in some part or sometime in life. And I'm a person who says, I'm Tom, may I help you, Bonine? So I'm always offering to help people. And if someone says, can I help you with this, Tom? I go, no thanks, I can handle it. In other words, I just don't like to accept help or guidance from other people. And once I understand that about myself, it's like, Tom, you need it just like everybody else does. And don't be reluctant to take it in areas where you need it. Okay. Well, we didn't talk about cognitive learning, did we? So I guess we'll have to squeeze that into Monday. Because this chapter is so important, I don't mind spending a little bit extra time on it. I got a cool thing on the internet to show you, but it's